Before you start repairing computers, there are basic things you must understand: the difference between the hardware and the software. If you don't understand this, repairing or diagnosing a computer will become much harder. Before I proceed here, I'm going to break it down. So what exactly is this computer hardware, and what is computer software, and how do they work together to make your computer function? Let's start with this hardware here. Hardware refers to a physical part of computer that you can touch. For example, what you are seeing here. Now, on this point, every component on this board is a hardware component. For example, we have this CPU, we have the screen, we have the battery, we have the cooling fan, we have the cooling sink, we have the power supply. All these physical components here, right? This is what basically is the hardware. Now let's talk about the software. Software refers to the programs and the instructions that tells the computer what to do. Let me make you understand. Software refers to the programs and instructions that tells the hardware what to do. Now look at it this way. This is right here, you can see my cursor is moving, right? This is the software part of a computer, which we have the Windows, these applications here, the drivers on this system, something like the Windows drivers, like the VGA drivers, the network drivers, the sound drivers. So in a simple term, for you to understand this generally, the computer hardware is what you can touch, and the software, which is physically what we are looking at here, this software part of a computer is what tells the hardware what to do. But there is something you will need to understand that is very important. One cannot properly perform without the other. Now let's say now we cannot have the computer software without this hardware working, right? And if the hardware is not working, the computer software cannot tell the hardware what to do. If the computer software now is not working, it cannot give the hardware the command on what to do. Now let's put it this way. Most times we do have crashed OS. What I mean by OS is operating systems. This is crashed Windows. We do have Windows not being able to boot. Now this process whereby we encounter these kind of issues, there is no how the system, which is the Windows, the software part of a computer, we command the hardware at that point. Rather, the hardware response, this particular hardware, if it's functioning, it will do its own part by trying to, start up with the startup chips, boot, like displaying on the screen of the software, right? Displaying on the screen. Once it displays, now what takes it off from there is the computer software. Now, if the computer software is not functioning or is not present at that point, there is nothing you can do with that system. So the computer software cannot work without the hardware, and the hardware cannot work without the software. I'm going to give you an example. When you press a power button, look at this right here now. Well, look at this. This is the power switch or the power button of this computer motherboard. Now, when you press the power button, the hardware receives power, right? And begin the startup process. The firmware, which is like this SMC chip that we have here, right? This is an example of a firmware. We have the chipset, which is this chip that we have here. We have the display chip, which is the graphics card. When you press the power button, the hardware receives power and begin the startup process. The firmware helps initialize the hardware. Now, the firmware, which is all these things that I've already pointed out to you, it helps to, initialize this hardware. It helps it to work. That is just what it's trying to make you understand. And then the operating system, which is the Windows, will now boot up from there. That is where now the software takes its place. Do you understand? And this point, you will now begin to interact with your computer. You can only interact with your computer through the software, and with the software you can command how the hardware works. Do you understand the whole thing there? So when a computer develops a problem, or when a laptop has an issue, you will need to determine whether you are dealing with a hardware problem or a software problem, or sometimes it can be the both of them. So as a technician, or as somebody that is starting a repair, when a computer is having an issue or a laptop is having an issue, that is why where repair diagnosis comes into place. That is where your troubleshooting process comes into place. As a technician, you must do a troubleshooting process. The first thing you are going to do, if your system is having issues, or even somebody that loves tech, even if you are just a common user, right? If your laptop has issues, or if your computer has issues, you don't just start opening the hardwares, or maybe kind of start setting some certain things on your software, right? You first of all start with a troubleshooting process, which trying to identify where the problem is coming from, right? So these are the basic things you need to understand. For example, now, if your Windows refuses to boot, and okay, let's say I have this system here to explain something for you, right? If these Windows have refused to boot, this problem now, let's say I turn on this computer and it refuses to boot on the Windows now, right? I will need to determine whether, okay, this issue now, why is this laptop not booting? Is it a hardware problem or a software problem, right? I will look at it. Okay, is this software related or is it hardware related? Because if it's software related, I can easily install another OS, that is another operating system, another Windows into this computer, right? I will just install. That is, you have identified that you are dealing with a software issue. Now, if it's a hardware problem, that is when you look at the, whether it could be at the SSD, the HDD, the RAM, maybe like any other components on the motherboard. There are a whole lot of things that can make a system not to, boot and come up. It's not just the software aspect. So basically, that is when you implement your troubleshooting process. I have this multimeter here that I can use to deal and understand what is going on in the computer hardware. You understand? And when it comes to my software troubleshooting, I have basically how I troubleshoot my own system. I'm experienced to the point that whenever a system is having an issue when it comes to hardware software repairs, I can troubleshoot it without any other external components. So these are basically things you need to learn. You need to know. It's very important. Understanding the difference will help you diagnose a problem. Understanding the differences will help you diagnose the problems. You understand where you are going to point it out. So remember, the hardware, that is the hardware part of a computer, is the physical component, or what you can basically hold with your hand and see, like the physical component. Okay, this is this is that. And the software is these programs, like the instructions, like the commands and all that, the drivers. So hardware plus the software is equals a full functioning computer system. So that is very simple as that. Now that you've understand the differences between the hardware and the software, it is a large circuit board that connects and allow many other components of a computer to work together, such as, when we talk about these components, we talk about the CPU, which is the central processing unit. That's the brain of the computer, which is this right here you're seeing. We talk about the RAM. I am not with the RAM here, but this is the RAM port. This is the RAM port. Most of you must have seen RAM, right? This is the RAM port, right? We talk about the storage. We talk about the storage, that is where the hard drive is being plugged in. This is the connector for the storage. This is the connector, that is the HDD or SSD SATA connectors, for the laptop motherboard. We talk about the power circuits, the main power rails, the 3.3 rails, the 5.1 rails, the 12 volts, the charging circuits, the bucket chip, we are going to break it down gradually. I'll break them down. And we also have the coils on this motherboard. We have the capacitors, we have the MOSFETs, we have connectors, the USB connectors, and many other components on this motherboard. So when we talk about the computer software, we talk about the program and the instructions, the commands that you give your computer to make the hardware function. In the next lessons, we are going to take these computer components, all these computer components, one by one, understand what they do, how they work, and eventually learn how to test and troubleshoot them with just your multimeter. So don't forget to subscribe to this channel. I am ICT Doctor, a skilled computer technician for both hardware and softwares. I help you bring knowledge about computer systems on both hardware and softwares. Make sure you subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.